Good morning everyone, welcome back to my channel. So this video is working on the splash of colour, which is just a celebration of doilies and embroidery pieces that I have collected over the years and fussy cutting them out and building them into something. So I've been a very busy girl and I fussy cut out of this pillow slip. Now this is not vintage, this is from our local linen store. I bought the pillow slip, so I got 2 panels of embroidery within the pillow slip, and I just love it. It grabbed my eye and I thought, oh, that would be just handy for projects. So I splurged and bought myself that. So I've started cutting some of those elements out. There's one piece through here and it just stops at the start of the embroidery on that doily with that leaf there, and I was really pleased with the colours and the way it blended through. This little guy was nearby, so I cut him out as well. I love how he's so whimsical, and I'm thinking he's going to go up the top here in that position. So these guys are just a case of pin them down, and then I go around the outer edge, my cut edge, with sewing machine cotton, just standard cotton, and whip stitch them all down, and that stops them fraying and breaking down. So that's all I have to do with those. So this piece is going to be sort of my breath of fresh air. Some of the other pieces are very heavily embroidered, where this one is just like whimsical play, and I'm really enjoying it because it sort of gives my fingers a bit of a break from, you know, embroidering, and my brain, and it's sort of just a space where I can just collage the piece together. Then down the corner here, I started adding in these 2, which come from this doily. I finally did it. I chopped in. There she is. It's the most beautiful thing. I chopped into it, took that little portion out, very carefully wove through there, and you can see it's had a lot of wear. You can see where it's actually, that little petal has come apart. There's 3 little green leaves on the end there, but 2 of them have completely vanished, and this one's just about gone as well. So she's an old girl. I don't know its history at all. It definitely is hand done by someone. It's not a machine piece, but yeah, it's just so pretty. And this lace, this edge, is popping up in one of the other stitchery pieces. So it's the gift that just keeps giving, this one. So I've been nibbling into that, and I've got myself out that little piece. So you can see how much fabric I cut away from it. And I'm thinking that's going to sit, that stem ends there. So I sort of felt like I could squeeze him into there. So I'll just pop a pin. So that just needs whip stitch. Okay, and they definitely look like wildflowers. I love how they've incorporated the 2 and 3 different types of stitches in that. You're probably getting a bit messy now looking at it. So let's just zoom in. See how on that one stem they've got the little white tulipy type flower, like a snowdrop. Then there's this random little bit of a leaf with 2 little orange hearts on it. Then they've come out here and done a series of French knots on a little stick-like branch. So cute, very whimsical. And this is the second piece that I took. So I'll just bring that up to the camera. Have a look at the leaves. Aren't they interesting? The little daisies over here with the little yellow centre. The bigger flowers with the orange centre, and then this here sort of reminds me of a snapdragon. The way they've done that satin stitch, just beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So I'm thinking my gap here could handle that piece, so it sort of looks like it's coming out. So I think what will happen with this particular piece of embroidery is the vine, we'll call it, which is a combination of all of these little elements, will wind through the piece. And then there'll be feature spots for either embroidery or prompts and things like that. In this zone through the center here, I've got just clusters building of different bits and pieces. So I want to do some little embroidery things in amongst it to help sort of tie the piece together. This little guy here, I had planned in the last video to put 2 or 3 on, but I end up just putting the 1 on. I just think this piece will come together so easily because I've got a lot of elements that can be used, that 1's enough. But I am going to put a running stitch in a purple around that edge, and then maybe have a look at doing something in the background there, like a seed stitch or something like that in another purple. So I'll be definitely embroidering that little guy some more. I'm looking at my purples. I might put a darker running stitch around him, and then I might need to go hunting for a really pale purple. Oh, here's something as a bit of a background seed stitch. Now, on the topic of seed stitch, I love seed stitch when it comes to making backgrounds from things disappear. So at the moment you can see the cut edge there of the doily underneath, and you can see my little overcast stitch, which is not an issue, but zones like that are perfect for seed stitch. So what I mean by seed stitch, especially on this piece, because there's not a lot that I'm going to be needing to do embroidery wise, unless it's a particular prompt that we have to do that requires a little bit of work and it's not a floral type prompt. So what I'm thinking of doing with this one is running seed stitch through all my gaps. Now, if you haven't done seed stitch before, I'll just give you a quick demonstration. And what it does is it really makes your piece blend. And it's just a series of itty bitty tiny stitches. This needle's probably a little bit thick for the task because I'm feeling a bit of resistance as I pull through the layers. So it will be better if I find maybe more of a long darning needle to do this. And this is such a great stitch that if you're sitting in front of the TV and you just want something mindless to do and you don't have to think too much, or you don't have a lot of light to do intricate, well, forget about it. You know what I mean? Detailed embroidery. I've just got to catch that up a little bit because my knot didn't come through all the way. So just bear with me. Oh, don't tangle. Just behave. There we go. Now, you may think this is just tedious and, oh my goodness, why would you want to do this? But trust me, it is the essence of slow stitch. It is just repetitive, quiet stitching. And if your piece is sort of whipping through quite quickly because you're using a lot of elements that are pre-made, like old embroideries and things like that, this is a really good way of adding another dimension to your piece. That's simple, very effective. It's sort of like when you camphor quilt the back of a piece of embroidery, and it just gives that, I don't know, that subtle, the subtleness of it. I do have a tiny stain on the edge of this purple flower. I don't know if you can see it. It's bugging me, that there. So I might see if I can find something that can work in there to help disguise it. There'll be a piece of embroidery somewhere. So I'm just using a pearl crochet cotton. Pearl meaning lustrous crochet cotton. I think it's a number 12. It's my go-to. I use a lot of it. It's very economical to buy. I get it at my local Spotlight store, or if I can, I try and spend my coins with an actual thread store or a fabric shop that is, you know, family owned. But sometimes you don't have access to those. They're a bit of a dying breed, which is such a shame. But I do get it. I do understand that these big consortiums are coming in, excuse me. Sorry. So where I can, I do try and buy with small business, or at least on Etsy. But even Etsy, sometimes you have to wonder if it's a big company behind the store. You hope not. And you hope Etsy, you know, filters all that. You just never know these days. So my seed stitch is coming along. You see what I mean by it's just easy stitching. It's going to give that pop of detail, and because I'm using a creamy pearly thread, I think it's going to sort of put a nice little lustre, interesting background behind. Like you could play with variegated threads with seed stitch. Just let the thread meander through. So now I'm coming over where that join is. I'm popping in a heap of little stitches and it just disappears. It's like your eye sees the bulk of the stitch. And you can do them any size you like. My seed stitch tends to be quite small. I don't know why. I just like, I think, the daintiness of it. And get into a bit of the rhythm. You don't need to have them all the same size, but it does look better. Having said that, you wouldn't probably notice anyway if there was a variation. The main thing is to have them go in all different directions. Don't have any two stitches going in the same direction or side by side. Like if you do a stitch like that, make sure the next stitch goes in the complete opposite direction. Okay, so that is seed stitch. You see them all popping through there? So that whole zone will come up beautifully with all those little itty bitty stitches through. So that's the plan for that. I'll just bring my thread through and lay that down. Now, as I said, I've got this little stain just here. There's nearly another one there that I can see. So I'm just going to go to my bucket of embroidery and find, this is from a pillow slip. That's got potential. There's a little bit. These might work. Yeah, let's get these little daisies out. So I'm just going to fussy cut around the three of them. And that will be a perfect size to drop in there over those little stains. I keep looking at this piece too and wondering if it needs to be bigger. I think I'll have to see how it goes with the prompts, because I have a feeling it could fill quickly. And I may need a bigger. I'm just wondering if I keep the little brown bit. I don't think I will. There's not a lot of brown in this. It's very fresh. So will it get bigger as in length? Not length, width. See, even those little satin stitches, you could reproduce those, find that colour, and then I could match them in. I'll bring this little guy down here. So these three little fellows, that was a cushion from a quilt set. You know, when you're at the op shop and you often see these random pillow slips, and they're usually the embroidered ones that no one likes to sleep on. They're heavily embroidered or beaded. It's the decorative cushion to a set within a quilt, and we never use them because they're they're hard on the face. Pop that one up there. So always go to the linen section of the, as in bedding section of an op shop, because you'll be surprised how many fabrics and that you can find there. 1, 2, 3. So once again, just overcast around and then stitch in there. Now I just want to show you, well, it's just, I just remembered this piece here. I did, excuse me while I jump up and grab the first couple journals of this stitchery. Let me bring the camera up. I remember doing a piece based on that had all that seed stitch. There's a good example of seed stitch. See that there? All that seed just makes for an interesting textured background. There we go. There's a heart with pink seed stitch. And then there's a piece of embroidery up there using a slightly bigger stitch. That was probably the biggest seed stitch I've ever done in the past. There's seed stitch around the back of flowers. So it's a perfect background. It takes time, but it is well worth the work. I don't think it's in that one. That's the second book I made for the Journal of Stitchery, Volume 1, where we were given a prompt each week. And they were just pages within a journal. There is a heap of seed stitch right in around the back of that linen. That piece of embroidery I found the other night. I have the second piece of that guy. Now what did I do with it? I think I'm thinking about using it on the vintage garden. That's it there. I was rummaging through looking for fabrics for Marianne, and I found that. So that little guy is the second. I think from memory it was a scrolly piece that I got, like a yet to be embroidered doily, you know, one of these. And it was like an element within the design, so I cut it out. That's the reverse of it. I think that went like that on the doily, if I remember rightly. So what I did there is couched all over it, satin stitched, then added beads, which is so much away from what we would consider doilies to be. So don't be afraid to dig out unfinished doilies, or if you see them in an op shop where a little bit of it's done, and you often see them with a roll of cottons like that. This is from an op shop purchase where I've got the cottons that the lady had left over, or it was an unfinished project. I can't remember now. These are perfect because, excuse me, someone has pre-matched them. So you can't go too wrong. You just know that that's going to work, and you haven't had to try and build your colour. I actually saw that in amongst my threads, so I've thrown it in the box to do with this particular garden project. But the piece I'm looking for, I need to put that back together with that, because that all belongs to the French garden project as little bits that I've found that will work with it and may be of use in the weeks to come. Seed stitch. There it is. That's it there. That is the same. Let's come up a little bit. That there is the same piece as that. So that's what I mean by thousands of little stitches help disguise a cutout element. It sort of makes your eye stop looking at the white edging around your piece. So don't discount using some gorgeous pieces like that. And I'll bring it up to the camera. Have a look at the cream seed stitch. Then I did little green ones. Then I poked in little bits of crocheting, added beads, layers of little flowers. So you can really build up on your wildflower prompt by having a base of something. Like, look at those two flowers there. Those in themselves are just beautiful. It's all machine done. This would have been programmed into a big sewing machine, and away it goes. Thousands of pillow slips at a time. Well, they are just beautiful pieces that can be chopped up and used, you know, in our work. So that's the plan there. I've got some pieces to stitch down. I've got seed stitch to do. What else was I going to do? This one is just such a breath of fresh air to do because the elements are quite simple. I have a bit of a gap here. I think these gaps are going to be needing to be left because the girls might give us a prompt and I'm going to need little spots around the place. The plan was to put the rolling pin underneath this and that would appear on the front of the rolling pin. But the more I do to this piece, I just feel like it needs to extend. And I think this space here might be perfect for a scene if the girls give us a prompt where I need a little bit of space. So I don't know, this piece, yes, at the moment is going on to a rolling pin, but it could even extend. Like, what I mean by that is I use a piece of fabric, for an example, and I add to the side of it some fabric right through, and it becomes more of a rectangular piece that hangs on a bar or a rod instead of the rolling pin. So if you're doing something other than a bobbin and you're thinking it needs to be bigger due to space and the elements that you're using, don't discount the fact that you start building out on your piece. You don't have to go down. You don't have to do your original plan. That's the beautiful thing about slow stitch, is you just never know where the piece will go. Like, I really feel like this is the bottom of my piece. Here's on my fabric. And I really feel like this is the bottom corner of my piece. So maybe my sideways extension has to come in here. Maybe I need to find a rolling pin that is more normal size. Yeah, I'm thinking here. Let me go to my pile of rolling pins. Won't be a moment, guys. Just hang for a second. Okay. So this was the rolling pin that I was going to use. Maybe I need to increase my size and put on another, how many inches is that, or centimeters? Another 9 centimeters. I think I have an even bigger rolling pin. Is that bigger? It is. So that would give me, she's a monster, but that would give me another 12 centimeters. So something to consider. Yeah, something to consider. If you find your piece is sort of taking you in another direction, just go with it, because it's probably correct. And I really feel like this piece is taking me further away from this linear long design. But we'll see. Just go with the flow. Okay, I've rewritten my words down in here, and I want to couch in those words. I like couching text because it allows you to go around corners really easily so that it actually looks like an O and not a rectangle or anything like that. So the plan is to run that stitch in here. Now couching is when you stitch over the top of your primary stitch, and we'll call this tealy shiny thread the primary stitch. So what I need now is to match a thread, or I can use a contrast thread, but I'm going to match it. I just grabbed out my cottons. Now, if you didn't know prior, due to just finding me, my grandmother was a wedding dressmaker. This is her threads from her craft room when we cleaned out her house when she went to a nursing home. She's no longer with us. She passed quite a few years ago, but this is a representation of the bridesmaids that she made dresses for. Look at the pinks. You could just about write a storybook on bridesmaid colours from the 80s through. So what I'm looking for is a thread in here that can go over the top of this guy. I might use that one. Whether there's a turquoisey thread in there. What's that one? It's more of a blue. I think I'll use this. These threads are old, and I probably wouldn't run them through my sewing machine. Some of them, they're not too bad because they're, you know, got a bit of age on them, but they're great for hand sewing. So what I want to do now is I'm going to thread up my second needle, and that is going to couch down the original thread with just some little stitches. So let's zoom in. You can do a lot with couching. You can really, so in behind there, I'm just holding that thread between my two fingers. That just keeps it gently in position. And then all I've got to do is come up beside it, jump over the top of the thread and stitch it down. And because this is a similar tone of colour, you just will not see those little stitches. And you've got to keep them pretty small. So that's 2 stitches on the down stroke of the D. Now I'm going to bring up my little over stitch, and I'm just going to lay that down. I'm now going to pick up the decorative stitch. I'm going to bring that back up. I'm going to pop that needle down, and I'm going to just get myself a D, like so, holding it with my finger there. You can go down again with that needle, or pick up your over stitch thread and just start following behind. Goodness me, I've caught. Now I have to thread the needle. Ho hum. It's all good. Helps you slow down the stitching process. So this thread is just unraveling so easily. It's so fine. Okay, let's start that again. Let's get our overstitch thread out of the way. That needs to be through there. Let's get our little D happening. And let's start stitching down the shape. It's fiddly. If the letters were bigger, it would be a lot easier. But it is worth it. When the letters are bigger, it happens really quick. So it's a very quick way of filling in embroidery too, because there's only a few little stitches needed and your letter is formed. The main thing is to hold the base thread down. And you just take your time and form form your letters. So that's probably enough. So I'm just going to pick up that thread now and just thread that needle down. Okay, so that's it. Now before I go too far, I might just scoot it over there and bring it up. I'll lay it down. Don't want to pull it too tight because you adjust your letters. And I'm just going to put one more stitch with the cotton over on the top of that D, just to secure that little bit there. Okay, so that D is not going anywhere. So now I can put that one down and start forming my O. Now it can be quite tricky to do O's, but just take your time, get it roughly where you want it, and then bring your thread back and use the thread, the cotton, to pull it into the space or the area that you want that little O to sit. As you can imagine, W's and M's and N's, things with strokes, are a lot easier. The round letters are more of a challenge. Now you can use over couching to make stems, edges to leaves, and then you maybe fill in the center of the leaf with stitching. I'm not a fan of what they call it, stem stitch. It's okay, but I don't know, it feels like I did so much of it when I was a kid, because stem stitch, that stem stitch there, where the stitch sort of comes back into the original stitch, and then you go again a little bit forward, and then you come back over the top of it, and I don't know, everything was stem stitch when I was a kid. When I've discovered couching, I thought, oh, it was like an epiphany, because it was like so textured and I could get better shapes, especially if you're doing something that's very curvy like a daisy. This is a really good way of getting the shape rounded. Okay, there's my O. So now I'm going to come up on that W. And for goodness sakes, I've made it curved. That was all very bright at the time, but we'll go with it. Because if you can celebrate curves, couching is the one that does help. So I'm just bringing my thread down so that's close. Then it's a case of picking up my needle, which is now twisted. I was just thinking how well this was going, and now I have needles and threads twisted. Okay, so I'll bring up my needle. My W is disappearing. Like I said, if this was bigger, it wouldn't be so fiddly. Degree of difficulty very high here. Gone quiet, concentrating. Now I've lost my thread out of the needle. You know what I think too? That W is too close to the O. Okay, I'm going to stop for a second and just backtrack. I need the I need that little bit of space between those two. So I'm going to ignore my writing, my underneath, and go my own way with it, because it's just a little bit too close, and you sort of want a little bit of air between your letters, not too much, because then it looks like a child's written it and they're sort of focusing more on the letters and not on the actual word. So I'm just going to just stop for a minute. This is painful thread too. It's got a real shimmer and it unravels really easily. Once again, degree of difficulty very high. So I'm just going to go back through the fabric and come up just a fraction. I hope you can see what I'm doing here. Yep. It does look messy too, because there's the pen in there as well, but once that irons away, see how that's flicking around? It's a funny little cotton, but it will work. So now I'm back to bringing up my thread. I think it's a pearl crewel type cotton. Well, not crewel. Crewel's usually wool, but it's a real glossy DMC product. Is it? No, it's something else. I don't know where I got that from. What's that say? Something Edmar. Oh, okay. This one I found at a little shop at Howard. It's like a drapery, old-fashioned drapery, as we would remember them as kids. They don't really exist much, so lots of all sorts in there. If you were sewing a pair of pants and you needed elastic or buttons or zips or just quilt fabric, this little shop at Howard in Queensland, southeast Queensland, near Harvey Bay, it's just like an Aladdin's cave of goodies. And I went in there, and that they had about 5 of those embroidery cottons. They were hanging in the embroidery section, and I was like, oh, they look interesting. I'll try them. Okay, that's that done. Now I'm going to bring up my thread to do the other side of the W. It's fiddly, but it's fiddly because I hope I don't turn you off of trying it. It's fiddly because my letters are small. My thread that I'm stitching down is twisting and mucking around. Like if you were to do couching with baker's twine, for example, I did that on a Christmas scene where I put the red and white striped baker's twine around the top of the gingerbread house, around the whole gingerbread house, and it couched down beautifully, but it's, you know, not slippery. It's doesn't untangle, where this little silky thread is pretty tricky, but it'd be worth it. I wanted a little bit of shimmer. How are we going for time? Plenty of time. Let's get this end done and we'll move on to something else, but couching was something I definitely wanted to show you. Okay. That's the N done. So this is a very boring TV. But I'm sure you're all sitting there stitching. That's what I do. I pop the videos on from everyone that's in the gang, and just it feels like you've got someone in the room with you listening to them. The beauty of YouTube. In Australia we have channels that have been with us forever. The formation of TV. And they must be sitting in their boardrooms, racking their brains of what they can do to bring people back to them. The free-to-air channels. In Australia, the main ones are Channel 9, Channel 10, Channel 7 and ABC. And I don't know the last time that I turned on those channels, because if we don't watch a series or a movie that is provided to us by those pay TV companies, I'm on YouTube. And if it's not just me, it's my husband as well, because we might pick a topic. Let's say tiny houses, for example. We might see a tiny house somewhere, and then down the rabbit hole you go, and you'll binge watch people making tiny houses. Or we might see something in the news about a polar bear, and then suddenly you're on YouTube going down the rabbit hole looking at where polar bears live and how they live. And it's like you can, I don't know, we used to have to go to school and university and all of those types of places to learn extracurricular activities like the life of a polar bear, for example, and you'd have an encyclopedia on a shelf somewhere that you could pick it up and read a page or two about polar bears. But now, YouTube, I can go to YouTube and type in couching stitches down, and there's 20 videos of professional textile artists showing me how to couch correctly down, you know, some embroidery. That just, yeah, I think it's amazing. I think it's absolutely amazing. It's like YouTube has opened up the world to us all. If only I'd thought of it. I'm just going to pop my thread. I ended off, in the chitter-chatter there, I ended off this. Why? I do not know. I'd run out of thread anyway. But this guy's still going. So I'm going to do the T. The T is good because I can do the downward stroke and a little cross stroke, and it'll hold its own. It's not like an O or the top of an N where you've got that curvature that you can't really stitch down. So there's my little T into position. So once again, I can start my thread. And start the couching process. How are we going for time? I don't want to bore you. I'll get this T done. So my homework for this is to get some seed stitch happening. Seed stitch is going to be one of those activities that you've finished the prompt, you feel like doing something on your piece, seed stitch. If you seed stitch the background of an entire piece, trust me, it will be stunning. It'll be next level. And you only need to do, say, if you pick up your piece every day and you work maybe a section that big, just a little area, you will be stunned at how quickly you get the whole thing done. I remember doing a Jessie Chorley panel early last year, and I seed stitched the entire background. Now that thing was what you'd class probably as a large tea towel. And I was like, oh my goodness, what have I done? I announced it on a video, and then I finished filming the video and I was like, oh my goodness, you crazy girl. But I did it, and it was over a 6-month period, and I just nibbled away at it. What's going on back there? My little thread's all twisted. Yep. So a H. I might just finish there on this couching because otherwise I'll run out of time. I'll just get this because I just spotted out of camera a piece of embroidery that I wanted to find a home for and fussy cut into it. So let's get that one done as well. Not all of my pieces will have the project name in it. Some of them, when I sort of thought, okay, the name, where would it go? It just didn't feel like it suited the colours and the style of what I think that piece will be. But this one, if this is not down the garden path, okay, so that's the downstroke of the H done. So I'm just going to anchor that up there. My thread is in behind here, so that should come up beautifully once I get rid of that brown behind. Just making that O look a little odd, but it is circular. Another thing you need to consider, which is sort of something I learnt many years ago, I had a part-time job in a little craft shop, and I was working for the nicest lady. She was just adorable. If you're still out there, Kim, and you've found me again, like I haven't seen her for years, hello. But she had a tiny little craft shop over near one of the hospitals in Brisbane, over near the PA hospital. And I had a part-time job there helping her, and she was doing a lot of folk art and painting, running classes, and I was sort of manning the little shop. She always said to me, because she did a lot of cross-stitch, tapestry, like very talented lady. She always said to me, you must sign your work. And then I started looking at all these tapestries that my grandmother was doing, and none of them were signed. So we just made a pact, my grandmother and I, that we'd always sign our work, and it really has paid off because now that Grandma's not around, we've got all of these tapestries that have been divided out amongst all the grandkids, and they're all signed, and she put the year on there as well. On the front, down the bottom corner, just like a painter would do, they sign their work. And it's really nice just to be able to pick up a tapestry and see that it was done in 1983. It makes it easy to date things, to work out how old things are. So I've sort of stopped doing it a little bit, but I'm going to start doing it again. I'm going to start going back through my pieces and just signing. So you could do a couple things. You could embroider your name, but if your name is really long and difficult to embroider, mine is not long, Corrine, but the two R's in Corrine tend to blend a little bit when I embroider it, and it looks like an M. So something I've been doing is I found some laundry tags. There you go, that little piece is out. I might hang on to that edge because that, to me, that silver might work in with the champagne garden one. So I'm just going to trim that out. Who knows where that will pop up. But yeah, back to the signature. Even if it's your initials and just the end of the year, like a 9-5 for 1995. The other thing I've been using lately are laundry tags. So, where are they? I made a little box for them. I found a C and an M, and in there is some laundry tags. So hop online in Etsy and see if you can find your initials somewhere. Now, they don't work with every piece, but then sometimes I just put them on, even though it doesn't work, because they're just on. Now, this little pack, I don't know how many are in here. There'd have to be hundreds. So that's one suggestion. You may be able to track down an embroiderer that can make these for you. So on a piece of cotton tape, they embroider your name. So just something to think about, guys. We're investing so much energy into these things. And it was actually Marianne that picked it up. She was having a look through my previous work to do with the Journal of Stitchery. And what was I doing? I cut that bit out. Yeah, she was having a look through the Journal of Stitchery projects that we've all been doing. And she was like, what's going to happen to your work? And I said, I don't know. And she said, well, who's going to inherit it? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if any of the kids would be even interested, all the nieces and nephews and, you know. So it just sort of made me sort of think about it, where we're creating these, I like that there. We're creating all these pieces. And even though the topic's not actually who gets the pieces, it's more who gets them and knows what they're about. So putting the name of the project, like down the garden path, is a great idea. But I think a bigger idea is putting your name on the piece somewhere. So whether you get some tags made, there's websites out there where we can get a piece of fabric stitched with our name, made by such and such, or our initials. I think we need to take a breath and do this, because the hours of work, and it wasn't until Marianne sort of pointed to it all that it reminded me of my conversation with my grandmother, where we said, let's start signing work, because even if it's not for our benefit, it's for others who pick up our work and go, oh yeah, that's great, 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 Corrine. See, I am great. And they then can see that the piece was completed in 2023. So I guess that's my message today. It's been on my mind a little bit. So I just wanted to sort of bring that to everyone's attention, that I think we need to do it. I really, really do. There's some videos that Rachel shared some time ago where she found a journal, or the two journals, made in a long, long time ago. Well, there was a debate that Rachel was looking at her pieces that she'd picked up in an antique market, and she was trying to decide, was it actually a really old piece, a heritage-made journal from maybe 100 years ago, or was it something made by the likes of all of us that we make it look old? I don't know. I've watched that video about 4 or 5 times, and I think it's original, but it's hard to say. Like, we're really getting tricky with our techniques that we can make things look, you know, older than probably what they are. Especially when you start watching people like Artie Mays and what she does with inks to age things, and how we can age and dye fabrics. It's getting tricky to really, really pick it. But yeah, anyway, something to think about. I think we need to do it. So if you're thinking that, I know when I mentioned this to Grandma, I can just remembering back to the conversation, she was like, no, I'm not an artist. Why would I do that? Painters do that. And I said to her, from my time in that little craft shop signing work that Kim was doing, like the folk art, she would sign her embroidery, she'd sign her tapestries, everything. But she was an artist. And I remember saying to Grandma, you are an artist too. You may be just completing a tapestry that's a pre-printed canvas, but it doesn't matter. It's logging your work. And how many times, Grandma, did you change the colours because you felt like the design needed a different colour? in an area, or it just wasn't popping enough. So that's the artistry. So yeah, that's enough. I'm just yibber-yabbering. But have a think about it, guys. I'm going to look into where I can get some labels printed, pre-stitched. Maybe I should pull my sewing machine out that has a program, the ability to have programs added. Oh, it's a bit above my pay grade, but I invested in a second sewing machine. Not last Christmas, the Christmas before. It was a treat. And it is a beauty. But it's like a wild Brumby sitting in the corner of my sewing machine looking at me. I can't ride him yet. He's frisky. He's a bit of a handful. There's a lot to learn. I'm a basic rider when it comes to sewing machines. I've had the same machine for many years. And this Brumby, who's got a cover over him in the corner looking at me, he's just sitting there waiting for the day that I go and grab the saddle and jump on. But he's got me a little bit intimidated, I think. I'm going to bring my thread up over here for that G, at the bottom of the G, I think. If I can get that stitch in first. So maybe I need to get my Brumby out and work out how I could write the words, you know, made by Corrine, or just my name. Might be a good idea. I could do with more thread. I think I need to end this guy off and grab some more thread. You might know someone with a embroidery sewing machine that can be programmed. Maybe ask them to run some tags through, get some strips of fabric, even if it was just calico, and you rip the calico into, say, a centimetre wide piece, and just get them to run a few meters off of your name. That would be a good start. You could stitch then, stitch them into position. Something to think about. Okay, how are we going? Coming up to the hour. I'm just going to pull that stitch down. I'm just going to get that G secure. So yesterday you would have watched my work on the French garden, and today you've got this one. So tomorrow you will see one of the others. What's going on back here? Oh, I've got a knot. Okay. Goodness me. I've got a knot. What's going on? Anyway, the perils of embroidery. Oh, what have I done there? It's like that has got caught. Okay, we're away. Oh, goodness me. Let's get this G sorted and then I'll let you go, because you've got stitching to do. Or housework. No housework. We have permission not to do housework. I'm sure I heard those words said by Rachel and Sarah. Embroidery, no housework. I wish. Okay. All right. Last little stitch for that G downward. Okay, there we go. That took forever, but that's a good start. All right, guys, this one is going to come together really easily. A little bit of overstitching to do to put those few little elements that are working our wildflower theme. This will go through the whole piece, so these sorts of spaces could become something, or like we planned, that is around the top of the rolling pin. We'll see. I think once we see some of the prompts, I'll then make a decision too on the rolling pin, the width. Do I keep going long? Do I go wide? Who knows? All right, everyone, look after yourselves, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye for now.